All right, hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. All eyes remain focused on Hurricane Dorian. Brushed by the northeast Florida coast today. Didn't give us too much in the way of weather. It was pretty much a close shave, but overall not too bad in this region. It looks like it's also giving Georgia mostly the same treatment, but the conditions will be continuing to deteriorate tonight for both South and North Carolina, and this thing will have very significant impacts for both the coastlines before it does move out of our area by Friday. So let's go ahead and get to it right now. Looking at the satellite presentation, the storm this afternoon and this evening, guys, this storm is serious. This thing is healthy, and it remains a very powerful Category 2 hurricane with very low pressure and a very wide wind field. And the core of the system has definitely rebuilt this afternoon. So I had a special video I put on my Facebook for Eastern North Carolina for some forecast corrections. But if you're watching overall, the two things we really watched today was as Dorian came up the Florida coastline, it kind of stayed a little bit west. It kind of did these little jogs to the west a little bit, and now it's sort of tried to turn, but it wasn't quite that. It's more kind of more like that. But the idea was the system tucked up pretty close to southeast Georgia. Notice how close we are to the Georgia coastline here. And this was supposed to be a little bit further out here, but now the evening forecast and everything are kind of showing us that not only is Dorian stronger, but the closeness to the coastline will be very, very close. So we have a very healthy hurricane. It's leveled off in terms of pressure and in terms of wind speed for the most part. It's at 110 miles an hour. It's a strong category. The end of Category 2, Category 3 begins at 111. So it's borderline major hurricane. And when we have these big eyes in these storms, they typically don't strengthen or weaken very fast. They like to kind of stay stable where they are, but this thing has a gigantic wind field. Tropical storm force winds go out more than 150 miles from the center, and hurricane force winds go out more than 50, 60 miles from the center. So definitely do not need to take the eye of this storm to have significant effects. And if you do find yourself in this inner eye wall, it's going to be real. This thing is absolutely no joke this evening. So, looking at latest National Hurricane Center, nothing much really new on the track forecast. We still see this bend occurring and then a really close shave. It appears southern South Carolina will be not likely to be taking a landfall, and northern South Carolina probably not either, but the storm really bends back towards you, and any tiny deviation is going to drag that eye wall right over the northern South Carolina area. And then obviously North Carolina as well, kind of in the same boat where we think some of these outermost islands and outermost sticking points like Wilmington and like Morehead City and whatnot will be taking almost direct impacts from the storm, and the conditions could be real rough tonight. So anyway, let's look at currently real quick in the Jacksonville area, guys. My area, we were fine. We had a couple wind gusts of 53 miles an hour, 55 along the coast. That's all we really saw. I didn't see any wind gusts above 60. Couple inland locations got about 48, 45 miles an hour. We had a couple trees down, some minor flooding and some roads, and some along the coast, a few minor roads flooded a little bit, but it was like ankle, knee deep water. It was nothing catastrophic and nothing to talk about really. A couple inches of rain. The most rain we got was south of us and a feeder band early in the morning. So overall, we got about as lucky as you can get again. So please, guys, if you are in Jacksonville, just appreciate how lucky you were. Yeah, it wasn't that bad. Yeah, you missed work for no reason. Oh well, you could live in the Bahamas. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I cannot accurately describe how lucky we've gotten every time now with Matthew, with Dorian, with Irma. Like, it's just we don't understand how lucky we got, and how much worse it could be. The only thing I wanted to mention for our area here in Northeast Florida is it's about to get really hot. As Dorian moves away, the northwest flow will take over. High pressure will build in from the west instead of the east. So normally we get the more humid air. Instead, we're getting the hair dryer effect from the west. This will be hot, dry weather. We're not going to get a bunch of afternoon thunderstorms for a couple days. It's going to be a hot, dry, gross end of the week here. Let's move right along here and talk about some of our state by state forecasts. Maximum wind gusts in South Carolina. Again, Dorian expected to curve up the coast here. So outside of the big effects of storm surge, which will be at least 4 to 7 feet across the whole area, we're talking about maximum wind gusts. Again, look at the reds here. We're talking about wind gusts over hurricane force. So anything red or above is getting at or above hurricane strength. And if you notice here, there's a few shaded areas of the coastline that get to near 100 miles an hour. So we're talking about those upper 80s to low 90s, even approaching 100 miles an hour. And it really depends in that last 12th hour if the eye wall comes more like this or if the eye wall is more like this. That can be the difference in an 80 mile an hour wind gust and a 95 mile an hour wind gust or a 105 mile an hour wind gust. So at the immediate coastline, we're talking just a couple miles off the shoreline. We're talking about major impacts with well into hurricane force conditions. And when you're talking about winds getting into 80 to 100 miles an hour, you're talking about significant structural damage, massive power outages, and serious structural damage. So please don't sleep on the storm as it comes by if you're at the coastline. Away from the coastline, you're expecting a pretty strong tropical storm for a couple hours. The timing for you guys is going to be the conditions are going to go downhill tonight, but the worst will mostly be tomorrow morning to tomorrow afternoon in the northern half of the state. Rainfall totals. Talking about 4 to 6 inches inland, as inland as Florence and Sumter, and then you're talking about those rainfall totals approaching 10 inches or more at the coastline, where you can see isolated totals even higher, at or above 10 inches to more than a foot. As far as North Carolina goes, it's kind of the same boat. The National Weather Service for your area has wind gusts along these little points, like areas around Wilmington and like Morehead City and some of these Outer Banks islands, taking wind gusts up to 115 miles an hour. Now, will that actually occur? It kind of depends how Dorian interacts with South Carolina before it gets to you, but the potential for winds over 100 miles an hour is very likely anywhere you see here. I kind of used east of Highway 17 as my rough idea, but that's generally the idea of anyone east of Highway 17 up to the coastline, Surf City, Emerald Isle, Morehead City, Swansboro, Wilmington, all these little towns in between, guys. You are looking at potential winds well into hurricane force. And the potential for sustained winds above hurricane force, and then wind gusts approaching over 100 miles an hour at times. So please, if you're at the immediate coastline, you still have time to leave. You need to be somewhere safe by tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, where the tropical storm force winds will begin to spread from north to south in a pretty consistent manner. But you still have time, and I would highly recommend getting away from the coast for this event. It's not going to be a fun time. The 4 to 7 foot storm surge totals may have to go up. I mean, we're talking about winds above what we saw with tropical storm or Hurricane Florence as it made its landfall. And although the core did come ashore right here in Wilmington, Florence was barely a Category 1. It produced a wide swath of 60 to 80 mile an hour wind gusts, especially in this northern region. But y'all didn't see winds like this, and it's only going to be the coastline. Notice how fast these oranges and yellows creep back in. Talk about Lumberton, Kennesville, even parts of Jacksonville. You could be getting back towards 51 to 70 miles an hour, which is no joke. That knocks out power, knocks down trees, and causes damage. But definitely not those well into hurricane force winds that may occur right at the coastline. So if you're in Emerald Isle or Surf City or something, please consider maybe getting out of there for tomorrow, and or be ready to really hunker down in the short term, because you may be very surprised about what comes across your area, and it may be much stronger than what you got with Florence. Rainfall totals, again, the same boat as South Carolina. We're talking about potential for heavy rainfall well inland, more than 4 inches well inland, and this will actually spread up more into Virginia and even Maryland as the system will becoming baroclinic. It'll becoming more extratropical, where you'll see kind of it begin to spread out. It will lose that swirly characteristic of a hurricane. It'll kind of look like an S shape as it does exit the coast, but the rainfall shield will spread much further than it does across Georgia or South Carolina and become a major issue. And once again, rainfall totals getting back towards the coast, 4 to 6 inches, becoming 6 to 8 inches, and at the coast, 10 or more inches with isolated areas, especially on the Outer Banks and whatnot. And New Bern even maybe getting upwards of 15 inches of rain. So this will be a big flash flooding event. It won't be a long-term flooding event like Florence was. Your rivers will be able to take a lot of this runoff, but a few hours of onshore winds will back them up a little bit, and then you'll have the rainfall, and with the tidal cycles, you get a lot of water rise in some of the same places you saw it. It just won't be for as long of a period of time. So that's kind of the best I got from the North and South Carolina region. I also wanted to point out, and the hurricane watches and warnings, which all remain in effect from this morning, are all the same. But I will show you here that tropical storm watches and warnings now extend up through Norfolk, who was under tropical storm watch this morning, is now a warning, and also parts of southern Maryland and even Delaware is going to be potentially seeing some of these tropical storm conditions. As Dorian does move off, the intense winds on the backside here will cause some issues, and the European model forecast, at least, which is cuts it really close to shore, about what we expect here, showing those upwards of 50 to 60 mile an hour gusts occurring on that Virginia tidewater region to include the Norfolk base. So if you're up there, expect a tropical storm tomorrow afternoon for at least a few hours. That rain shield will spread over, be a very cloudy day on Friday, and then those winds will really kick up. And as the storm does exit, guys, watch for this northwest turnaround of these winds. When they come around, they're going to snap around in a hurry, and those can knock down a lot of power lines and trees and whatnot. And they can be very deadly because it's a rapid wind switch. You go from this real strong onshore wind, and then as soon as Dorian's center passes, the winds kick back around the other side in a hurry as like the rest of the environment, kind of the pressure tightens back up as the high pressure tries to come in behind the storm. And that gets people killed because the clouds are starting to disappear, and then the winds whip around the other way, and that tree that was trying to hold on for hours went back the other way. Like you were trying to pull a twig off a tree, you would like twist it. It's kind of that same idea. You twist it back and forth until it breaks. So be very careful as this thing passes, both in South and North Carolina. The return winds in this could be pretty ferocious when they come back around. So that's what I got this evening for the Carolinas and the rest of the Dorian forecast. Again, Northeast Florida made out pretty well. We got lucky again. Georgia's going to mostly make out okay besides the water rise at the coast, but then the Carolinas are in for a nasty evening tonight through tomorrow night, and it will be improving by Friday morning as Dorian will be beginning to exit the Outer Banks and race up the coast. And we do still need to watch out for, as Dorian does exit, we'll have not only a coastal impact along most of the New England area, from like coastal erosion, high winds, high surf, rip currents. We'll also be seeing this thing turn into a pretty powerful extratropical storm as it moves past Nova Scotia, where some actual weather warnings may be required up there as well. It'll be a very powerful extratropical low pressure. The rest of the tropics tonight, guys, are still busy, but nothing really imminently threatening. None of these storms circled here have any more direct threat besides Dorian to land. Ferdinand has moved on shore as a tropical depression and will dissipate shortly in the mountains of northern Mexico. A little bit of rain to South Texas, not really a big deal. Gabrielle is going to move up to the north and not bother anybody. This wave still could develop as it moves away from Bermuda, but regardless, it would just be for record keeping. Gabrielle was our seventh named storm of the year, and this puts us well past the average for the year, which we normally wouldn't see our seventh storm until September 16th. So now we are officially in an above average season, and will continue to be until we catch up with history or not. And we do have several more waves in Africa. This one right here has about a 50-50 shot over the next few days as it gets into the main development region. And we're going to see a couple more waves behind that, these Cabo Verde or main development region hurricanes. This area of the Atlantic will be busy going into mid-September, and the conditions in the Atlantic will be favorable for these storms to not only develop, but they will generally move low and move towards the United States and move towards the Caribbean, where they always have to be watched for direct impacts to the coast. So nothing imminent, nothing on the doorstep, nothing in the next week. Just know that the tropics are going to stay busy through the month. And in the northern Pacific, we also have Hurricane Juliet, the 100-mile-an-hour winds. And this storm will likely dissipate over the colder waters over the next few days. And we also have another tropical depression, I think, that just formed. This is actually new. It will pass south of Hawaii, though. So there are tropical storms everywhere. The Western Pacific's going. The Central Pacific's got storms. The Atlantic's got like 5 storms. It went from 0 to 100 in a hurry, like it very well can. So never think that just because it's a quiet start to the year, it will not stay that way. So that's what I got for you guys this evening. Please take Dorian seriously. We'll have another update out in the morning talking about the latest update in the forecast, but it's going to be a wild ride tonight in South Carolina and North Carolina tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening. I think people on the coast might be surprised about what they see. It's going to be a very rough go of it, but it won't be a very long event, thankfully. The tropical storm force winds will be around a while, but the hurricane conditions should be fairly quick, and by Friday afternoon, you should be getting out of it pretty fast. So that's what I got for you guys this evening. Thanks for watching and have a good one.